Welcome. Today we're going to be looking at what Catholic really means, and especially in the context of a lot of uh, Roman Catholic polemics that appeared these last couple of weeks about Catholicity. A lot of Roman Catholics seems to misunderstand what the term Catholic means. They think it means universal, and so because they have a lot of believers around the world, they think that they're the only Catholic church that exists, or that they're one of the few churches that can claim to be Catholic, whereas the Orthodox Church cannot claim to be so. Today we're going to be looking at what Catholic really means in terms of etymology and also patristic witness of some sort. This is a form of the Roman Catholic argument. It doesn't have to be in this specific way or sentences or words. It can be explained in different forms of arguments too. But at least in my opinion, I think that a lot of Roman Catholic argumentation relies on this presupposition that the mark of the church is to be Catholic, which is true, it's in the Nicene Creed. To be Catholic is to be universal. This is the part where it's wrong. But then, moreover, they say universal means having faithful of many different nations around the world. That's not true either. We're going to be looking at why they're not true. And you get the crux of the argument. Only the Roman Catholic Church fits this description of being truly Catholic. Therefore, the Roman Catholic Church is the true church. It is the only apostolic church. A different form of the argument will be according to the liturgical rites, because the Roman Catholic Church has a variety of different liturgical rites from all across the world. Not only do they have believers all around the world, but they also have different liturgical rites that satisfy those different ethnic groups. That's the kind of idea. So they are truly Catholic. That's what they will think. The fundamental mistake here is misunderstanding what Catholic means. Catholic is a Greek term. It is a combination of kata and olos. Kata means according to, and olos means whole, entire, complete. So olos, even in scripture, can carry the usage of, for example, referring to the entire world. But if you say the whole world, we're not saying the term whole can be only used to describe the entirety of the world. It can be used to describe certain other things as well. And what we're going to be really realizing is that the completeness, the wholeness of the church is not according to it being universal, but rather it is according to the unity of faith, that all of the parts, and I'm using, in an analogical sense, that all of the parts of the church, attributes of the church, contribute consistently to the wholeness of the church. This is why we see doctrines holistically, right? If you've seen the video on the Tome of Leo, this is an example of this holistic aspect of our theology. Will be how you can kind of tie in exchange of properties in Christology to theosis, right? This is an example of the wholeness of the faith. And so it refers to unity of the faith, completeness of the faith, and completeness of the attributes of the church. What we're also not going to be seeing, we're not going to see that the church is considered to be whole or universal. No, we're not going to be seeing this idea in scripture or church fathers or in tradition, where we're going to know the true church is the true church because it is universally believed all around the world, right? That's not considered as a definition that comprises the church. Now, since we explained what Catholic means, let's look at what universal means. There are many different Greek terms for the term universal. One of the terms that I want to look at is oikumene or ecumene. Ecumene has multiple different meanings. It can mean universal, it can mean imperial, it can also mean the known world. So examples of this in case of the known world is that the Roman Empire, especially in the 5th and 6th centuries, considered itself as the known world, itself as the ecumene, as itself as the universal empire. They obviously didn't mean it in the sense that the Roman Empire conquered the entire world, right? People back then were smart enough to realize that there are still a lot of parts of the world that was not conquered. The Romans were, for example, aware of the Chinese, right? They were completely aware of the Chinese. They weren't blind to their existence, but rather universality for the ancient person meant something completely different than being global, right, or comprised of global citizens in this kind of globalistic scheme. Another example, and this is a patristic case of the term universal meaning something else, and it's not having the synonymous meaning of Catholic, is the disputation between Saint John the Faster, who was Patriarch of Constantinople, and Saint Gregory the Great, Pope Saint Gregory the Great. This was a dispute in the 6th century when the Patriarch of Constantinople was for the first time called Ecumenical Patriarch. And Saint Gregory opposed this. He did not like this. He did not like this designation for a patriarch because he thought that will, and this is in reference to a lot of papal supremacy debates, he taught that it meant that there was a bishop that called himself, that argued for universal jurisdiction or some sort of that. For him, no bishop should call himself universal. Well, many bishops in history have called themselves Catholic or part of the Catholic Church. And this is a proof, I will say, that Catholic and universal mean completely different things. They have different meanings. Many bishops have referred to their own jurisdiction as the Catholic Church, or as bishops as Catholic. An example will be in the 4th century, the Armenian Church referred to itself as the head of their church as Catholicos. And St. Gregory in his epistles, book 8, letter 33, for example, says, whoever calls himself or desires to be called universal priest is in his relation to the precursor of Antichrist. He doesn't have a problem with someone calling themselves a Catholic priest, but he has a problem with them calling themselves universal priest. This is again a demonstration that the term Catholic and the term universal are different things. Now, enough has been said about the etymological significance of the term Catholic. What does Catholic mean according to Orthodox Christianity? The next couple of pages are going to be taken from God, History, Dialectic by Joseph Farrell, where he spends 3 pages, I believe, explaining how the Orthodox Church, really how the Church of the first millennium considered the term Catholic. He starts by saying the much maligned word Catholic comes from the Greek katoliki, which is comprised of 2 words, kat or kata, meaning according to, and ole, meaning the whole or the integral totality. As such, it is often mistranslated as universal, but it connotes no bare universality or majority point of view. By the way, Farrell he has translated Koine Greek texts from the fathers such as Saint Maximus the Great's disputation with Pyrrhus. So this is a man that knows Greek. Okay, this is a man that does know Greek. He's the reason why we can read disputation with Pyrrhus in English today. If the early church had that in view, the word katapantic could easily have done, right? So there's another meaning of universal, that is katapantic or majority kind of view, which word means according to all or according to everyone. All throughout its history of employment in the first Europe, that is the first millennium church, the Orthodox Church, that's what first Europe for him means. The word Catholic thus meant something very precisely distinguished from the majority vote of all those who have faith, for it was held that the faith transcended the witness of individuals or any grouping of them. A catapantic church will stress simply those who assemble, and when they were not so assembled, that church will cease to exist, right? For them, Catholicity will just means having a lot of people, but that's not the case. The word Catholic thus connoted and still connotes more than a mere consensus or opinion poll. It meant and means that there is an interior spiritual coherence and consistency of Christian doctrine across all cultures, times, and circumstances. Only secondarily does it mean universal, and seldom meant or means universal geographical extent. So the Roman Catholic interpretation of the term Catholic is a very, very rare, almost non-existent feature in the Greek usage of the term Catholic. It means something completely different. It thus connotes also the unity and interrelatedness of individual Christian doctrines. Each coheres in every other, such that error in the one will lead inevitably to error in the other. This is why we don't believe in different theological schools, right? Because an error in an aspect of the Christian faith will mean an error in all aspects of the Christian faith, because the systems are so interconnected with each other. This is what the Catholicity of the faith truly is. And you can read the rest for yourself. If you're interested, you can pause and read. I kind of just wanted to read the aspects of this page that are important. He kind of goes more into detail about the Catholic characteristic of the faith and of the church. And one of the things, this is why, for example, heresy in Greek is very significant, because it means choice, right? To choose and to narrow yourself from the wholeness of the church. This is why heresy is significantly dangerous, right? Because it is fundamentally against the wholeness of the church. It is, in a sense, allowing someone to pick and choose according to what he wants to believe, right? With no regard to the actual tradition or actual fundamental grounding of the church or of the belief. And also, therefore, that Catholic theology, therefore, becomes a deliberate attempt to avoid novelty in theology. Not only patristic theology, because, not everything that's old is gold. Certain heresies were also old, but it has to be coherent with proper patristic, biblical, traditional theology as well. So I think that should be enough to explain what Catholic in Orthodoxy truly means. And I want to finish this video by critiquing this argument on multiple different rites. I would recommend you watch my video on how Eastern Catholics refute Roman Catholicism. The video is going to be in the description below, most likely. But I have no problems just repeating the main crux of the argument. The Roman Catholic argument for multiple rites, again, is that to have multiple different rites is to bear the true mark of Catholicity. As we have seen before, the term Catholic means something entirely different. But one of the things I want to talk about in terms of liturgical rites is that the early church did have distinct liturgical rites, right? They didn't all have the same liturgical rites, but they also developed in context of the universal church, the Catholic Church itself, the entirety of the church. And so, having different rites was not a problem back then, because they didn't come from different heretical traditions and developed in that heretical tradition to become something different. In the case of the Roman Catholic Church accepting different rites, several rites did go through those heretical developments. And an example of that will be the Chaldean or Syro-Malabar liturgy, where the liturgy fundamentally has Nestorian bearings in it. And an example of this will be the anaphora of Nestorius, which, as you can see on the right here on the image, the page called Holy Kurban of the Syro-Malabar Church, they celebrated the bishop of the Syro-Malabar Eparchy of Great Britain. This bishop is connected to the Roman Catholic Church. Celebrated the anaphora of, guess who? Nestorius. And this is not a guy who just happens to have the name Nestorius in the 7th century or whatever. No, this is referring to the Nestorius. That guy who rejected the term Theotokos, that guy. It is referring to him. It is also the case that in the liturgy of the Chaldean rite, the Greek doctors, one of the Greek doctors that is considered by the rite is Nestorius, but also Theodore of Mopsuestia, who's another condemned heretic, and Diodore of Tarsus, who today is known as a Nestorian or a proto-Nestorian, whatever you want to call it. Another example of this will be the Byzantine liturgy. Sure, it is indeed true that Byzantine liturgy in the Roman Catholic Church, that is the Uniates, it is true that there have been certain parishes that have undergone Latinization, but commonly speaking, the Byzantine rite is still very largely Orthodox in its worship. And not only can you separate the theology of the liturgy from the scholastic theology that we kind of talk about here in this channel or other places, but at the same time, you look at the liturgical calendar, what do you see? Well, the liturgical calendar contains Byzantine saints, including post-schism Byzantine saints, right? And this will include even people like Saint Mark of Ephesus. Certain jurisdictions might try to modify their liturgical calendar to throw out saints that they don't like. But another big problem in this case then is the acceptance of people like Saint Gregory Palamas. Now, you cannot have a Byzantine liturgy without Saint Gregory Palamas. The second Sunday of Great Lent is the Sunday of Saint Gregory Palamas. This is an argument I made over and over again. It's part of the Byzantine liturgy, and you can find various different examples from other rites as well. The point here is that to accept separate rites that contradict the theology of your church is ironically to lose the Catholicity of your own church. And so what's really ironic is that the Roman Catholic Church, out of all of the contending apostolic churches, that is the Orthodox Church, Church of the East, which is the Nestorian Church, or non-Chalcedonian so-called Oriental Orthodox churches, which is the Monophysite Church, out of all of the different contending apostolic churches, only the Roman Catholic Church really cannot be said to be Catholic, because it has now accepted in its communion different rites, different creeds, right? You can say the creed without the filioque if you're a Roman Catholic now in those Uniate parishes. And as I want to reiterate, only the Roman Catholic Church out of all of the churches ironically cannot be called Catholic, because the sense of the term Catholic has been totally subverted and totally destroyed in this ecclesial understanding of adopting different theologies. And that's all I wanted to say for today. That's what I want to say for Catholicity, what the term Catholic means. I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, share this video, like it, you know the drill. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't, or if you got magically unsubscribed. And I will see all of you in the next video. Thank you for watching. May God be with you all. Thanks for watching.